There's a moment that happens in every rich person's life, a fork in the road that most people never even notice exists. On one side of that fork, you become a millionaire, comfortable, secure, set for life, maybe even set for your kids' lives too. On the other side, you become a billionaire. And I don't just mean you have more zeros in your bank account. I mean you start playing an entirely different game, with entirely different rules, against entirely different opponents. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most millionaires never cross that fork, not because they aren't smart enough, not because they don't work hard enough. Many of them work harder than the billionaires who lap them financially. They stay millionaires because somewhere along the way, their mind quietly closed a door that the billionaire's mind kept wide open. Today, we're going to open that door. We're going to walk through exactly what separates the two mindsets, step by step, with real patterns pulled from how the wealthiest builders on Earth actually think. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you will never look at money the same way again. Stick around because the third mindset shift on this list is the one almost nobody talks about, and it's the one that matters most. Let's get into it. Let's start with something that might sting a little. $1 million used to mean something extraordinary. Today, in a lot of major cities, $1 million barely buys you a house. And yet, becoming a millionaire is still treated like the finish line. It's the number people put on vision boards. It's the number in self-help books. It's the number that gets celebrated with champagne and Instagram posts. But here's what nobody tells you. $1 million is not a different mindset from a normal salary. It's the same mindset, just repeated for longer. Save aggressively, invest steadily, avoid debt, live below your means. Do this for 20 or 30 years, and almost any disciplined professional, a doctor, an engineer, a small business owner, can get there. It's math, predictable, linear, patient math. That's not a bad thing. Becoming a millionaire through discipline is genuinely impressive, and if that's where you are right now, you should be proud of it. But it's also where most people stop growing, because the very discipline that got them there starts working against them. Why? Because millionaire thinking is fundamentally about protection. Once someone accumulates real money for the first time in their life, their brain flips into a defensive posture. Don't lose it. Don't blow it. Don't take stupid risks. This instinct is so strong that it becomes identity. I am someone who doesn't gamble with money I worked hard for. Billionaires think almost the exact opposite, and that single inversion is the hinge this entire video swings on. Ask a millionaire how they built their wealth, and you'll usually hear some version of the same story. They earned income, they saved a portion of it, and they invested that savings into diversified assets over time. Ask a billionaire the same question, and the story is almost never about saving. It's about ownership. Millionaires optimize their paycheck. Billionaires eliminate the paycheck entirely and replace it with equity. Think about what a paycheck actually is. It's a fixed exchange. You trade a set amount of your time and skill for a set amount of money, no matter how much value you create. If you're a brilliant surgeon who saves a hospital $10 million in efficiency, you still get paid your salary. If you're a genius engineer who builds a feature that adds $1 billion in company value, you still get your salary and maybe a bonus. The upside doesn't belong to you. It belongs to whoever owns the equity. This is the trap millionaire thinking falls into without realizing it. It optimizes the size of the paycheck instead of questioning the entire structure of getting paid one. Billionaires ask a completely different question early on. What can I own a piece of, instead of what can I get paid for? That single reframe changes everything downstream. It changes what jobs they take. It changes which side projects they pursue. It changes how they negotiate. A billionaire-minded person will often accept less cash up front in exchange for equity because they understand that cash is linear and ownership is exponential. Here's a simple way to picture it. Imagine two people join the same startup on day one. One negotiates a higher salary. The other negotiates a smaller salary but more equity. For years, the person with the higher salary looks smarter. They have more cash flow, more comfort, more visible success. But if that company becomes valuable, the equity holder's slice can eventually be worth more than the salaried employee will earn in their entire career, combined, several times over. That's not a hypothetical. That pattern has repeated at nearly every major company that ever became a giant. The early employees who took equity over salary quietly became the wealthiest people in the building, even though for years they looked like they were making the riskier or worse choice. Millionaires optimize for certainty. Billionaires optimize for upside, even when the upside is uncertain, even when it looks irrational to everyone watching from the outside. Now, before you go quit your job and demand equity in everything, hold that thought, because this mindset only works when it's combined with the next shift, and this is where a lot of people get it dangerously wrong. Let me pause here and address something, because I guarantee some of you are thinking it right now. Okay, but taking equity instead of salary is risky. Isn't that just gambling? This is the exact myth that keeps brilliant, hard-working people stuck at the millionaire ceiling forever. They confuse the billionaire mindset with recklessness. They think the difference between a millionaire and a billionaire is that one of them is more careful and the other one just got lucky rolling the dice. That could not be further from the truth, and understanding why is going to completely change how you see risk for the rest of your life. So stay with me, because what we're about to cover next is the actual engine behind almost every massive fortune ever built, and it has nothing to do with luck. Here's the biggest misconception about billionaires. People assume they take on more risk than everyone else. In reality, the wealthiest builders in the world are often more risk-aware than the average person. They just calculate risk completely differently. A millionaire mindset treats risk as something to minimize. Diversify your portfolio. Never put too many eggs in one basket. Protect the downside at all costs. This is smart advice if your goal is preserving wealth you've already built. It is terrible advice if your goal is creating wealth that doesn't exist yet. A billionaire mindset treats risk as something to engineer, not avoided, not embraced blindly either. Engineered, shaped, structured, and controlled so that the potential downside is limited, while the potential upside is left completely uncapped.
This is the concept of asymmetric bets, and it is arguably the single most important financial idea that separates the two tiers of wealth. An asymmetric bet is any situation where what you could lose is small and fixed, but what you could gain is large and potentially unlimited. Founders starting companies are making an asymmetric bet. They might lose a few years of a normal salary, but if the company works, the upside has no ceiling. Early investors in breakthrough technologies are making an asymmetric bet. They might lose the capital they put in, but that capital is a small, known, bounded number, while the return, if they're right, can be 100 times larger. Compare that to how most people are taught to think about risk. Take the safe job, take the guaranteed raise, avoid the volatile investment. Every single one of those choices is what's called a symmetric trade-off. The amount you could gain and the amount you could lose are roughly proportional. There's no engineered asymmetry. You're not stacking the odds, you're just accepting whatever life hands you. Billionaires spend enormous energy hunting for situations where the math is lopsided in their favor. Not gambling, hunting. There's a difference. A gambler risks a large amount for a small, uncertain gain. A billionaire risks a small, defined amount for a massive, uncapped gain. Same word, risk, completely different structure underneath it. This is also why so many billionaires seem almost boringly conservative in parts of their life that don't matter, while being aggressive in the parts that do. They might drive an ordinary car and live in the same house for decades, protecting the downside on things that don't move the needle, while making bold, concentrated bets on the one or two things that could actually change their trajectory. Millionaire thinking spreads risk evenly across everything. Billionaire thinking concentrates risk precisely where the potential reward is disproportionate and eliminates it almost everywhere else. If you remember one sentence from this entire video, remember this: it's not about how much risk you take, it's about the shape of the risk you take. Now, here's where most people watching this get uncomfortable, because we need to talk about effort. You've probably been told your whole life that hard work is the answer. Wake up earlier, hustle harder, grind longer than everyone else. And to be fair, that advice isn't wrong, it's just incomplete in a way that quietly caps how far it can take you. Because here's the thing nobody wants to admit: there is a hard physical limit to how much any single human being can produce with their own two hands and their own 24 hours in a day. No amount of hustle culture, cold showers, or 4 a.m. wake-ups changes that limit. You can only work so many hours. You can only personally serve so many customers. You can only personally build so much. So if hard work alone can't be the answer, what is? This next mindset shift is the one I promised you at the beginning of the video, the one almost nobody talks about, and once you see it, you'll start noticing it everywhere. Millionaires generally build their wealth through their own effort, amplified by decent decisions. Billionaires build their wealth through other forces entirely, forces that multiply their effort without multiplying their time. This is the concept of leverage, and it comes in 4 main forms: labor, capital, code, and media. Labor leverage means using other people's effort to produce outcomes larger than what you could produce alone. A business owner with 50 employees isn't 50 times smarter than a solo freelancer. They've simply attached 50 additional units of effort to their own vision. The freelancer's income is capped by their personal hours. The business owner's income is capped only by how many people they can effectively organize. Code leverage is newer, but arguably the most powerful form in the modern era. A single piece of software built once can serve a customer in New York and a customer in Nairobi at the exact same moment, without the creator lifting a finger for either transaction. Code doesn't get tired. It doesn't need sleep. It scales at the speed of a server, not the speed of a human body. Media leverage works the same way. A single video, a single book, a single piece of content created once can be consumed by one person or 1 million people at almost the same cost to the creator. Your effort stays fixed. Your reach becomes unbounded. Notice the pattern in all 4. In every single case, the wealth is no longer tied to the creator's personal hours. That tether gets cut. And the moment that tether is cut, growth stops being linear and starts being exponential. This is precisely why a talented surgeon, no matter how skilled, will almost never become a billionaire from surgery alone. Their income is permanently changed to their own 2 hands, and their own 2 hands can only operate so many hours in a week. But a mediocre piece of software solving an ordinary problem distributed to 10 million people can create a fortune that dwarfs a surgeon's lifetime earnings, not because the software is more valuable than the surgery, but because the surgery can't scale, and the software can. Millionaire thinking asks, how can I be more productive with my time? Billionaire thinking asks, how can I remove my time from the equation altogether? That's not a small difference in strategy. That's a difference in the entire category of game being played. Before you get too excited and start trying to build leverage into everything you do, I need to warn you about something, because this is exactly where a lot of ambitious people get burned. Leverage doesn't just multiply your wins, it multiplies your losses too. That's the part hustle culture conveniently leaves out. If you build a team and your decisions are wrong, you don't just lose your own time, you lose everyone's time, and often their trust and livelihood along with it. If you take on debt to acquire an asset and the asset falls in value, that leverage flips against you violently because now you owe money regardless of what the asset is worth. If you build code or media that reaches millions and it contains a serious flaw, that flaw reaches millions too. This is exactly why the next mindset shift matters so much, because it's the thing that keeps leverage from becoming a wrecking ball instead of a superpower. Here's something almost every self-made billionaire has in common that gets very little attention: an obsession with time horizons. Millionaires generally think in quarters and years. Hit this year's savings goal, get this year's bonus, watch this year's portfolio performance. This isn't foolish, it's simply the natural time horizon of someone building wealth through steady, compounding effort inside an existing system. Billionaires think in decades, sometimes generations, and that difference in time horizon changes almost every decision that follows from it. When you think in years, volatility is terrifying. A market downturn feels like a crisis. A failed product launch feels like a catastrophe. A slow month feels like proof that the plan isn't working. So you react, you pull back, you play it safe. You optimize for smoothing out the short-term bumps because the short term is the only horizon you're really measuring yourself against. When you think in decades, that same volatility becomes almost irrelevant noise. A market downturn is simply a chapter in a much longer story, one that history shows almost always resolves upward over enough time. A failed product isn't a catastrophe, it's data, collected cheaply, that improves the next attempt. A slow month barely registers because the real scoreboard is being measured in years, not weeks. This is why so many billionaires can watch their net worth swing by hundreds of millions of dollars in a single day and appear almost unbothered, while a millionaire can lose sleep over a much smaller percentage move in their own portfolio. It's not that billionaires have thicker skin emotionally, it's that they are measuring themselves against an entirely different clock. Long-term horizons also unlock a strategic advantage that short-term horizons can never access. Patience becomes a weapon instead of a weakness. When almost everyone else in a market is anxious, reactive, and forced to make decisions on a short clock, the person calmly operating on a decade-long clock can wait for mispriced opportunities that panic creates. They can hold assets through downturns that shake out short-term thinkers. They can say no to good but not great opportunities because they're not desperate to hit a number by December. This is the quiet, unglamorous secret behind an enormous number of massive fortunes. Not brilliance, not even boldness, but the simple willingness to remain calm and consistent over a time horizon most people psychologically cannot sustain. Now, I want to be honest with you about something, because this video would be incomplete without it. Everything we've covered so far, ownership, engineered risk, leverage, long time horizons, sounds clean and strategic when you lay it out like this, but living it is not clean at all. It's uncomfortable in ways that don't show up in the highlight reel. Choosing equity over salary means watching people who took the safe path live more comfortably than you for years, sometimes a decade or more, before your bet ever pays off, if it pays off at all. Engineering asymmetric risk means being wrong repeatedly in public and absorbing the quiet judgment to people who think you're reckless. Building leverage through people, capital, code, or media means carrying responsibility for outcomes that are only partially in your control. And thinking in decades means enduring years where absolutely nothing looks like it's working, with no guarantee that patience will ever be rewarded. This is the part almost nobody puts in the highlight reel, and it's exactly why so few people ever cross from millionaire thinking into billionaire thinking. It's not that the mindset is secret, it's that the mindset is expensive, emotionally, long before it's ever profitable financially. So let's bring this all together, because there's one final thread that ties every single one of these shifts into a single, simple idea. Look back at everything we've walked through today.
ownership instead of salary, engineered asymmetry instead of avoided risk, leverage instead of raw effort, decades instead of quarters. Notice what every single one of these shifts has in common. Each one trades short-term comfort for long-term optionality. Each one gives up a guaranteed smaller outcome in exchange for an uncertain, potentially much larger one. Each one requires tolerating discomfort, financial, emotional, or social, that the millionaire mindset is specifically built to avoid. That's really the whole story. $1 million is what you get when you optimize for certainty. $1 billion is what becomes possible, not guaranteed, but possible when you're willing to trade certainty for asymmetric upside, and then have the patience to let that upside compound over a time horizon most people can't stomach. None of this means you should recklessly quit your job tomorrow or bet your family's savings on a single idea. Engineered risk still means engineered, bounded, deliberate, calculated. What it does mean is this: if you find yourself only ever optimizing the size of your paycheck, only ever avoiding risk instead of shaping it, only ever trading your own limited hours for income, and only ever measuring your life in months when the goal you actually care about needs years, maybe decades, to become real, you don't need to answer all 4 questions today. You just need to sit with them, honestly, without rushing to feel good about the answers. Because the truth is, the gap between a millionaire and a billionaire was never really about the money. The money is just the scoreboard. The real gap is the mindset behind it. And now that you can see it clearly, you get to decide which side of that fork you're actually walking towards. If this video shifted something in the way you think, hit subscribe, because on this channel, we break down exactly how the wealthiest minds in the world actually operate week after week. And let me know in the comments, out of the 4 shifts we covered today, which one hit you the hardest? I'll see you in the next one.